Hello, everybody. Today we are going to continue with the second part of anti-arrhythmic drugs. So in the first part, we had the basic introduction to arrhythmias, and we mainly concentrated on the mechanisms of the arrhythmias, and we also looked through the classification of anti-arrhythmic drugs. So in this class, we are going to describe the pharmacology of different classes of anti-arrhythmic drugs. As I already told you, this chapter is a little higher for your undergraduate level. So I have edited most of the part and I'm concentrating only on the relevant areas which may be important at your level. So first we'll be looking at class 1 antiarrhythmic drugs. So they, as we have already seen in the mechanism of action in the classification, they bind the sodium channels, and this is more strongly in the open or the active state and less strongly in the resting state of the sodium channel. So you have already learned that the sodium channel exists in three forms, that is resting, activated and inactivated. So these drugs, they bind to the sodium channel more strongly in the active state and less strongly in the resting state. So from the cardiac electrophysiology that we studied, we know that by blocking sodium channels, these drugs will reduce the rate of phase zero depolarization in the fast response channels. That is, it will decrease the conduction velocity in the atrial fibers, in the ventricular and the Purkinje fibers. They also reduce the rate of phase 4 slow diastolic depolarization in slow response channels. That is, they will decrease the abnormal automaticity. So you have to have a recap of the cardiac electrophysiology to understand these two lines. Now, the subclasses, we have got 1A, 1B, and 1C. So as you can see, all of them will block the open sodium channels, that is the active sodium channels, except 1B, which is blocking or is more active on the inactive sodium channel. And so the subclasses 1A and 1C, they will decrease the slope of the phase 0 either moderately or markedly as compared to 1B, which is decreasing the slope of phase 0 somewhat less as compared to 1A and 1C. So the 1A brings about a moderate decrease in conduction because they are decreasing the slope of phase 0 depolarization. The 1B, which is not having much of an action, is only bringing about little decrease in conduction, whereas 1C brings about marked decrease in the conduction. They also decrease the slope of phase 4 depolarization, and 1A, it is decreasing the slope of phase 4 depolarization in the ectopic foci, whereas 1B decreases it in the ventricular tissues. On the other hand, you can see the 1C is somewhat different. It will raise the threshold potential. So we already mentioned to you that if you raise the threshold potential, it will decrease the automaticity. So they are all decreasing the automaticity of ectopic tissue or the normal tissues, normal pacemaker tissues, by either decreasing the slope of phase 4 depolarization as in 1A and 1B, or by raising the threshold potential as in 1C. So when you see all these drugs, okay, they are pro-arrhythmogenic. So as I already told you in the very beginning, that some of the drugs which are used for arrhythmias, they themselves can cause some other sort of arrhythmias. So among this, you can see only 1B is safer, whereas both the other subclasses are pro-arrhythmogenic. So we have to use 1A and 1C with caution because they can lead to some sort of other arrhythmias, whereas 1B can safely be used. Now we look at the examples of subclass 1A. The 1A example is quinidine, and it is a dextroisomer of alkaloid quinine from the cinchona bark. So you already know quinine is an anti-malarial drug, and it is obtained from the cinchona bark, and the dextroisomer of quinine is quinidine, which is an antiarrhythmic drug. So And the cardiac tissues, it decreases the automaticity in ectopic foci and decreases the conduction velocity in the atria and the Purkinje fibers. So we have already discussed that decreases the conduction and decreases the automaticity in the ectopic foci. Another additional action is that it has got a vagolytic effect. Because of the vagolytic effect, it can enhance the AV node conduction. So, though it is decreasing the conduction velocity in atria and Purkinje fibers, because it decreases the slope of phase zero depolarization in the fast response channels. However, because of vagolytic effect, it can enhance the AV node conduction. This drug also has got a negative inotropic effect, that is, it decreases the contractility of the heart. It also has got some extra cardiac actions like alpha blocking actions. And I already told you, just like quinine, this can also be an anti-malarial drug. It is an antipyretic drug and it's also a weak skeletal muscle relaxant. These are extra cardiac actions which we are not concentrating at this point. Our main emphasis will be on the cardiac action. Now, it has got a number of ADRs, as you can see. It is causing conduction block, obviously, because it decreases the conduction velocity. It causes bradycardia because it decreases the automaticity. Because of the negative inotropic effect, it can cause heart failure. And very importantly, it is a pro-arrhythmogenic drug. It can cause arrhythmias like torsades de pointes, ventricular tachycardia, which can be very serious. It also causes hypotension, thrombocytopenia, angioedema, and a characteristic adverse effects called as synchronism, which is occurring only on prolonged use. So it is occurring because of cumulative overdosage, and the synchronism is mainly characterized by neurological effects like giddiness, vertigo, tinnitus, deafness, visual problems. The most characteristic feature of synchronism is tinnitus. And many of the people, when they complain about tinnitus, you can have a clue that it could be because of synchronism, because of prolonged use of quinidine. Now, what is the status of quinidine use is, it is not a popular antiarrhythmic drug, obviously because of its adverse effects and more so because it is an pro-arrhythmogenic drug. Now, the subclass 1A, procainamide, it is a derivative of local anesthetic procaine, which we have already studied in the previous topics. How is it different from quinidine? It has got less depression on the contractility and the AV conduction. So obviously it doesn't have an inotropic effect, doesn't cause cardiac failure. It doesn't have the vagolytic effect and doesn't affect the AV conduction. Vagolytic and alpha blocking action are absent. Chronic high doses lead to development of SLE. This is the main problem with it. It can lead to SLE. Subclass 1A, disopyramide, it has doesn't have any alpha blocking property. However, its vagolytic effects are more prominent. So we have discussed about class 1A, quinidine, procainamide, and disopyramide. So their status is somewhat not very popular because quinidine obviously is because has got some pro-arrhythmogenic effect, and the others two are very, very infrequently used as compared to the other drugs that we'll be seeing in the later slides. Now we come to subclass 1B. So as we already said, this is the subclass of one which is relatively safer as compared to 1A and 1C, which are both having pro-arrhythmogenic effect. Now, the most important drug under subclass 1B is lignocaine. And this is a very important drug. Lignocaine you have learned as local anesthetic, and one of the additional actions or additional uses of lignocaine is in arrhythmia. So many a times when in the exams we ask you the uses of lignocaine, you only end up saying about the local anesthetic use. You have to remember it has got a very important other use, that is as a class 1B antiarrhythmic. Now, it has got a lot of merits. First of all, it is least cardiotoxic among the class 1. So you have to learn these, you have to mainly concentrate on these areas. So when we have the post discussion, I'll be asking you about these merits. So you have to learn these by heart right now during this session. So subclass 1b, it is least cardiotoxic among the class 1 drugs. It selectively acts on the depolarized ischemic or damaged tissues with minimal effect on normal tissue. In the previous class, I told you that the ischemic tissue, the damaged tissue in myocardial infarction, it is depolarized. And this drug has got a selective action on the depolarized ischemic or damaged tissue with minimal effect on the normal tissue. So you can use them for in arrhythmias which are associated with depolarizations, as you see in the case of myocardial infarctions or digitalis toxicity. So it is one of the lignocaine is a preferred antiarrhythmic drug in myocardial infarction. It has got a rapid onset and short duration of action. It doesn't cause any depression of cardiac contractility. It has no effect on the blood pressure, and it has minimal effect on the ECG. So it will not interfere with the interpretation of a myocardial infarction. So these are the merits of using lignocaine in myocardial infarction. Least cardiotoxic, it is selectively acting on the depolarized damaged tissues with minimal effect on the normal tissues, has rapid onset, short duration of action. Its action can be titrable, that is, you can adjust the dosage. So please add on that point also. It has got a rapid onset, short duration of action, and its action can be titrable. No depression of cardiac contractility, no effect on the BP, and it has got minimal effect on the ECG. So it will not affect or interfere with the interpretation of the myocardial infarction status. Pharmacokinetics, it is orally inactive because of high first pass metabolism. So you have to give it by IV infusion in the case of arrhythmias in myocardial infarction. So it is acting only for a duration of 10 to 20 minutes because of rapid redistribution. It has got some ADRs which are principally neurological, like drowsiness, paresthesias, blurred vision, disorientation, nystagmus, twitchings, fits. Where do we use this? As I already told you, the principal use is in arrhythmias associated with myocardial infarction. The ones which are usually associated with myocardial infarctions are ventricular tachycardia and ventricular fibrillation. And it is also seen in it is also used for ventricular tachycardia because of digitalis toxicity. But this, the one that is bolded or highlighted, that is VT and VF after MI, this is the most prominent use of IV infusion of lignocaine. So please remember the use of IV lignocaine. The next, the subclass 1B is mexiletine. It is also a local anesthetic, but it is an orally active one as compared to lignocaine. It is also used in ventricular arrhythmia following acute MI as an alternative to lignocaine. So it's an orally available alternative to lignocaine. Then you have got subclass 1B, phenytoin. This is only reserved for digitalis induced ventricular arrhythmias. This is also given by IV infusion. So under class 1B, we have only one oral drug, that is mexiletine, and all the others are given IV. Now we come to subclass 1C. Example is propafenone and flecainide. So propafenone, it is mainly retarding the conduction in the Purkinje fibers and also accessory pathways of conduction. So whenever I say accessory pathways, so probably the use will be in Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome, that is there here. And it has got additional beta blocking property and can worsen the congestive heart failure and ischemic heart disease. It has got high pro-arrhythmogenic effect, Torsades de Pointes, and it is used only as a reserve drug for ventricular tachycardia, Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome, and for AF. Again, flecainide is a reserve drug. So you have seen that among class 1, 1A, 1B, and 1C. So we are mainly going to concentrate on class 1B, that is containing lignocaine, mexiletine, and phenytoin, of which lignocaine is more important. And so as a short note, you have to mainly emphasize, or you have to emphasize mainly on the use of lignocaine in the case of arrhythmias among the area that we have covered so far. Now we go to class 2. So class 2 contains the beta blockers, and we are going to discuss mainly about propranolol and esmolol. So beta receptor stimulation, you already know it increases the automaticity, enhances the AV conduction, and it shortens the effective refractory period of supraventricular tissues. Because it is increasing the AV conduction, it can decrease the refractory period. So this is the action of the beta receptor stimulation. So obviously when you block them, then there will be suppression of automaticity at SA node as well as ectopic foci. It will decrease the AV conduction and increase the ERP of the supraventricular tissues. So among the antiarrhythmic drugs, the beta blockers are a class which are well tolerated and relatively safe. So what are the antiarrhythmic uses of propranolol? So here I'm only concentrating on the antiarrhythmic uses. I'm not going into the other uses of propranolol. You have had a list, you have learned a list of the complete uses of propranolol when we were studying the beta blockers. So here we are only going to discuss which particular arrhythmias they are used. So when we were studying the beta blockers, we studied that they are used in arrhythmias. Here we are going to study in which kind of arrhythmias they are used. So they are used in case of inappropriate sinus tachycardia, supraventricular tachyarrhythmia. So I've given an examples in the previous class: atrial flutter, atrial fibrillation, paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia. Or in all these conditions, you can be using these propranolol. It is also used in arrhythmias which are occurring because of sympathetic activation, as seen in pheochromocytoma, hyperthyroidism, and during anesthesia with halothane. It is also used for treating digitalis-induced ventricular tachyarrhythmias. This again we had discussed when we were studying the drugs for congestive heart failure, and we had studied the ADR of digoxin, and we had learned propranolol is the drug of choice for the treatment of ventricular tachyarrhythmias caused by digoxin. So they're used for tachycardia, they are supraventricular tachyarrhythmias, and the other two are the sympathetically mediated tachyarrhythmias, as in pheochromocytoma, hyperthyroidism, and anesthesia with halothane, and digoxin-induced ventricular arrhythmias. Esmolol, when you compare it with propranolol, is a very rapid and short-acting drug, and hence it is used only for emergency treatment of ventricular trait in atrial fibrillation and atrial flutter and arrhythmia associated with anesthesia. So principally it is used for the same thing, but because it is very rapid and short acting, we are giving it IV for emergency treatment of atrial fibrillation and flutter, and for the arrhythmias during anesthesia. This for the same reason, but it is the one that is we prefer for emergency control of these arrhythmias. Now we go to the class 3 or potassium channel blockers. So obviously they'll be blocking the outward potassium channels during the phase 3 of the action potential. During the phase 3 of the action potential, so they will prolong the phase 3 repolarization. As they prolong the repolarization, obviously you will prolong the action potential, and when you prolong the action potential, obviously the effective refractory period also will be prolonged. So all these points we had discussed in the previous part about the action potential, ERP, the phases and all. So we have to relate those with the introduction that we had. Under this, we have got a very important class of drug that is called as amiodarone. Okay, now this drug is very important because it is one of the most commonly used drug, and not only that, it is one of the most commonly asked antiarrhythmic drug in the exam. So you all have to be very particular that you are making a short note on amiodarone. This will be invariably asked in the exam from this chapter. So it's an iodine-containing drug. It is a broad spectrum antiarrhythmic. That means from the word itself, you can understand that it is going to act in a number of arrhythmias. It's a broad spectrum antiarrhythmic drug. This drug, though it belongs to class 3, it also has class 1, 2, and 4 action. So it's a broad spectrum. It acts on different type of arrhythmias. It is almost having all sorts of actions that we have discussed. It has got good efficacy, and it has got low chances of developing the torsidis, D pointers. So these are the reasons why it is one of the very popular drugs. So pharmacokinetics, it is has got incomplete and variable oral absorption. The action develops after weeks or days after oral injection. That is, if you give it by oral route, you can't expect the arrhythmias to be controlled in a day or two. It will take many days or sometimes weeks also. But it will terminate, or it will control the arrhythmias very soon after IP administration. It has got a large volume of distribution. This is very important because it tends to accumulate in different kinds of muscle and fat. And it has got a long T-half, about 3 to 8 weeks. So it has got very important pharmacokinetic peculiarities, which should be written in your short note. So it is effective for both ventricular and supraventricular arrhythmias. So we have mentioned that it is a broad spectrum antiarrhythmic. So it is used in supraventricular arrhythmias. Examples AF, AFL, and PSFVT. It is used for ventricular arrhythmias like VF and VT. It also reduces arrhythmic deaths post myocardial infarction. It is also used for Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome tachyarrhythmias. So just remember, it has to be used in for supraventricular as well as both ventricular arrhythmias, being a broad spectrum antiarrhythmic. Now it has got a number of ADRs like hypotension, BP fall, bradycardia, nausea, GI intolerance, photosensitization, corneal microdeposits, pulmonary fibrosis, peripheral neuropathy, and it also has an effect on the thyroid function. And what's that effect? It inhibits the peripheral conversion of T4 to T3 and its interaction with the receptor. So T3 is the active form of T4. It will prevent the conversion of T4 T3, and T3, even if it is formed, cannot act on its receptors. So it will ultimately end in sometimes hypothyroidism. It also is a source of iodine. So it can be also leading to hyperthyroidism. So the effect can be either hyperthyroidism or hypothyroidism. The line on the iodine has been skipped. So this, remember, it can either decrease the action of the thyroid leading to hypothyroidism, but being a source of iodine itself, it can also lead to hyperthyroidism. So they can have both the effects. So among all these ADRs, you can see the pulmonary fibrosis is the most severe or the most life-threatening sort of ADR. And we have to, whenever a patient is on amiodarone, there has to be frequent checkups, which will include eye checkups as well as the x-rays of the lung and all. And so you have to follow up the patient for all these ADRs when he's put up on amiodarone. Then the class 3 other drug is dronedarone, and it is a non-iodinated congener of amiodarone. It is less toxic, less effective, only used for supraventricular arrhythmias. Then you have got class 3 sotalol. It is a drug which is a beta blocker, but it has got prominent class 3 action, that is why included in under class 3. It is used for ventricular tachycardia, AF, Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome, and you can see that it causes prolongation of QT interval. So again, it is not a very safe drug, and we are not recommending it that much. So among the class 3, you have to mainly emphasize on the amiodarone. Other two, that is dofetilide and ibutilide, they are pure class 3 antiarrhythmic. So far, whatever we have discussed in the class 3, they were having additional actions here and there, but this is a pure class 3 antiarrhythmic. So this can be asked, name two pure class 3 antiarrhythmic drugs. So we have to mention dofetilide and ibutilide. And it is mainly used for converting the AFL, that is atrial flutter, to AF, and then the AF to the sinus rhythm. The dofetilide is given orally, whereas ibutilide is given intravenously. Now, next one is class 4 drugs. So class 4 drugs, they inhibit the calcium channels. Okay, so the so we already have learned the regarding the slow channel action potential, which is there in SA node and AV node. So this is inhibiting the calcium mediated slow channel inward current in the SA node and AV node. As a result, you have a decreased phase 4 depolarization in SA node, leading to bradycardia, and also the AV conduction is slowed in the AV node. Okay, so this is what is happening in the slow channel action potential. So under this, we have got verapamil, which is used mainly in paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia as well as in AF and AFL. So please note the use. This is PSVT. One of the most important drugs for PSVT is verapamil. ADR can be bradycardia, hypotension, AV block, and cardiac arrest. So it should not be given for a patient who is having cardiac partial heart block or a sick sinus. Diltiazem is another calcium channel blocker. It is similar to verapamil, but it has got less bradycardia, less hypotension, and less cardiac depression. And hence, it can be given for PSVT, which can occur in mild to moderate CHF. So, the drug of choice of PSVT, one of the drugs is verapamil. Diltiazem can be an alternative, especially in patients who are having mild to moderate CHF. Now we come to the miscellaneous drugs. Under this, we have got adenosine. This is again a very important short note that can be asked from the area of miscellaneous drugs. So it is an endogenous purine signal molecule. It activates the acetylcholine sensitive potassium channel, and because there is a potassium entry, it causes membrane hyperpolarization and decreases the SA node automaticity. So it is mainly decreasing the SA node automaticity, and indirectly it can also decrease the AV node conductivity. So just like the verapamil only, this is also decreasing the automaticity as SA node, but the mechanism is different. Obviously, it is affecting the potassium channels, and indirectly it can decrease the AV node conductivity also. It is rapidly metabolized by plasma adenosine deaminase, and T half is less than 10 seconds. So you have to remember this. It has got a very, very short T half of only less than 10 seconds. It is given by IV. It is a drug of choice in PSVT. So far we have studied 2 drugs which were important in PSVT. We also had mentioned others, but this adenosine is the drug of choice. Then the alternatives can be verapamil, digoxin also, which we have learned in the previous topics. Okay, so ADR is transient asystole, lasting for less than 5 seconds. Bronchospasm, chest pain, and hypotension also have been reported, but it is fortunately very short-lived and doesn't cause any life-threatening consequences. Advantages of over verapamil in PSVT. Adenosine has an advantage, that is it has got efficacy which is sometimes better than verapamil. It has got a short duration of action, and hence the adverse effects are also not very long lasting. It is only transient. It can be given to patients with hypotension and CHF or those receiving concomitant beta blockers. So, okay, verapamil cannot be given for patients who are receiving concomitant beta blockers, because both of them will lead to an AV block. So may be effective in patients who are not responding to verapamil, because sometimes it has shown more efficacy than verapamil. So it has got a better efficacy, it has got lesser ADRs and transient ADRs, shorter duration of action, and it can be given to patients who are having comorbidities like CHF, or those who are on beta blockers, or those who are having lot hypertension. Other drugs are ivabradine. Other miscellaneous drugs are ivabradine. It's a pure bradycardic drug. It decreases the heart rate. It is used in sinus tachycardia. Atropine, it's used in AV block because which can be occurring due to vagal hyperactivity, as in the case of digitalis toxicity and MI. So it is a vagolytic drug. So it can be useful in conditions where the block is because of the vagal overactivity. Digoxin, it slows the AV conduction in atrial fibrillation, which has got with increased ventricular rate. It decreases the ventricular rate in atrial fibrillation. So all these things we have studied earlier in the cardiac failure. And you have to you have to remember mainly the ivabradine, which is a new drug, purely bradycardic. It has decreases only the heart rate and hence used in sinus tachycardia. Now, finally, we'll just have a look into the different types of drugs used for important arrhythmias. PSVT, adenosine is there. Then you have got calcium channel blockers like verapamil and diltiazem. And I told you the advantages of adenosine over verapamil. Beta blockers like propranolol and esmolol also can be used. Then for atrial fibrillation and flutter, can use propranolol, calcium channel blockers like verapamil, amiodarone, digoxin. And for Wolff Parkinson White syndrome, the main treatment is the surgical or the radioablation and propafenone, which we have seen. Then acute MI arrhythmias, we can give IV lidocaine. Amiodarone is mainly for preventing the post-MI arrhythmias. But for acute cases, it is lidocaine which is preferred. Some people also prefer to give a beta blocker, but it is now the preferred drug is lidocaine. And this has been often asked in question in the university paper, which one is the preferred drug for terminating arrhythmias post myocardial infarction? Is it the lidocaine or is it propranolol? So the answer is lidocaine. I have told you the advantages, what the reason is. It's selective for the damaged tissue. It is short lasting. The action is titrable. It is better tolerated. Okay, so these are the some of the reasons why lidocaine is preferred in post for arrhythmias associated with MI. For ventricular fibrillation, the treatment of choice is definitely deep fibrillation. The drugs that can be useful are amiodarone and propranolol. So these are the choice of antiarrhythmic drugs. So I've just mentioned only the very important arrhythmias. There are a lot of arrhythmias, but at your undergraduate level, I believe you can just concentrate on these arrhythmias. So the important areas that you will be concentrating is principally on class 1B, that is lignocaine. You will be learning about amiodarone. You will be learning about the choice of drugs in different kinds of arrhythmias, and you will also see through adenosine. These are the 4 core areas: lignocaine, then amiodarone, adenosine, and the choice of drugs in different arrhythmias. This should be essentially learned by all the students after this class. Thank you.